Hey, folks, I don't know if you noticed, but there were a lot of folks over the last couple of days who were posting about the birthday of the Bill of Rights. And I know there's a lot of other things going on, such as, I don't know, Donald Trump meeting with the head of TikTok today. But I thought that we would talk a little bit about how the Bill of Rights and the way that we talk about it actually fits in with the Patriot myth, and how every time that we explore these things, it 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 undermines that broader mythology that people want to foist on you, as a way of propping up the words of the founders as being the be all end all go to for everything that we need to attend to, from obviously gun rights, to bodily autonomy. In any case, the so let's talk a little bit about the Bill of Rights. Hey, I'm Tad Sturmer. I teach public history at Johns Hopkins, and I'm a scholar of the American Revolution. This, by the way, is a really cool, nifty little mug. My students give me gifts. I don't ask them to, but they it's always very nice of them. So one of my students gave me this, which is, in our context, you fill it with hot coffee and the Bill of Rights. So it's the entire Bill of Rights. You fill it with hot coffee, and then you watch your rights disappear. Um, so an editorial edge, as well as being nicely productive. Um, but this broader point about the Bill of Rights, is that, and that how it fits into the Patriot myth, that the Bill of Rights is sold and told as part of the story of the miracle of Philadelphia, and of the visionary, forward thinking geniuses, once in a millennia geniuses, that actually met to create a free republic in which everybody would one day have the benefits of citizenship and be able to enjoy liberty and pursue happiness. But the Bill of Rights is a key part of this. Oh my gosh, here is a Bill of Rights that, for the first time ever, lays out the rights that, as human beings, everybody should possess, and that, differs what the federal government cannot do from the state governments. Okay, but it's still but the narrative is miracle at Philadelphia, geniuses of liberty, working for universal freedom, and look, they included the Bill of Rights for the first time in any written constitution, in any written government. Even though, as a basic factual level, that's not true. It's based upon the English Bill of Rights, actually written down, part of the British Constitution. But let's get to the broader point about how the Bill of Rights has nothing to do with the miracle of Philadelphia, and exists in spite of all of those people who were at the Constitutional Convention: Madison, Franklin, Washington, Hamilton. In spite of them, they talked about it. They refused to put in a Bill of Rights. The Bill of Rights, in fact, exists only as a result of opposition to the Constitution, only as a result of of organized opponents to what the Constitution in fact had in it. That what came out of Philadelphia was so imperfect that it had no chance whatsoever of being adopted by enough of the other by enough of the 13 states to actually become ratified. It exists not as a result of the Constitutional Convention, not as a result of the miracle at Philadelphia, but as this, in terms of this perfect union crafted by demigods. But it was drafted about, as it was drafted, that's all about consolidating power for a new federal government, for that first republic, in order to be able to create this white ethno-state of, by, and for the people in the room. We the people, meaning the people in the room. That's something I borrow from Joe McGill. It's not about safeguarding individual liberties. It's not about identifying these core elements of the Enlightenment, certainly not its universality. This is about, how do we, as part of a commercial venture, how do we establish the First Republic as a white ethno-state? Now, what's really interesting about the Bill of Rights is that the anti-federalists and other opponents of it were mostly skeptics of centralized power. And they included people like many former loyalists who had seen firsthand how unchecked authority led to abuse, much of that abuse coming even from the patriots during the Revolution. And they recognized that the Constitution itself that came out of Philadelphia gave way too much power to the elites who ran the show in Philadelphia, and not enough to protect the rights of the people, even if it was a narrow exclusionary white people who were going to live under its authority. So the anti-federalists and the other components of the Constitution demanded concrete protections for individual rights and limits on the power of that federal government, because they saw the power of the federal government, particularly the executive, as being unlike anything they had ever seen before. Certainly went far beyond what it is that they had seen in any British monarchy for more than a century. And so they wanted assurances that the First Republic wouldn't repeat those sins, wouldn't repeat the excesses of the patriot governments, of the patriot state legislatures that were dominated by narrow economic interests. So the anti-federalists, who are responsible, we have to thank for the Bill of Rights. The opponents to the Constitution, the folks who weren't in Philadelphia, who weren't a part of some sort of miracle, or maybe it's a different miracle if you're into that kind of language. Their fight wasn't just about adding a few amendments as a decorative flourish. This was a battle to force an unwilling Federalist majority of white elites, to answer for the Constitution's failures to protect freedom. And Federalists like Madison caved, not out of a deep commitment to rights, but to prevent the Constitution's outright collapse. They didn't pay attention to people like Edmund Randolph or George Mason and others who in the Constitutional Convention said this is not good enough. They waited until they were faced with the whole thing imploding, their commercial union, their First Republic not making it through. And they caved. So the anti-federalists, again, which included so many former loyalists, drawing on their experiences with British history, but also Revolutionary era and post-war of independence power struggles, often went further in advocating protections than the constitutional framers ever intended. It's this very interesting collection of former staunch patriots, people like Samuel Adams and Patrick Henry, and former loyalists. And so whether it's freedom of speech or freedom of the press or freedom of religion, ironically, it was their vigilance, the opposition to the miracle in Philadelphia, to the folks who drafted the Constitution, it was their vigilance, not Federalist foresight, that gave us the Bill of Rights and made them scramble. Even the Federalist Papers makes them scramble to justify what it is that they did, and they still can't do it without the commitment of passing the Bill of Rights. So the Bill of Rights isn't some gift from on high, from some sort of divine providence. It is a compromise, but it's a compromise born of vigorous resistance. And that is the broader lesson for American history that we can pull from this. It is born of vigorous resistance, a hard-fought acknowledgement that the so-called miracle wasn't enough to guarantee liberty or even come close. And celebrating the Constitution without that opposition is just more of the myth-making that keeps the founders on pedestals that they do not deserve.